And welcome to another edition of Life Outdoors. I am your host, Chris Reckling. You looking at that first shot there, you saw that there's nobody in the studio. It's not just me today. We're going to be joined here in a second by Matt Jansen from the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Today we're talking about nature in one of its most beautiful forms. It's a hobby that gives you so much and so much return. It's a stress reliever. It opens up a world of wonder. There is a world of education and amazement with the world of birding. And we're going to talk about birds of the Outer Banks with Matt Jansen, who's joining us now from Ocracoke Island. Matt, welcome to Life Outdoors. It's good to have you.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me back. Great to see you today.
And speaking of Ocracoke, Life Outdoors is sponsored by Ocracoke Tourism Development Authority. Ocracoke, miles from the mainstream. You are miles from the mainstream. You are out on the island right now. What's it like out on the island? Because what a beautiful place to be all year round, right?
It's gorgeous, Chris. Right now, we're having that same cold temperatures that I'm sure a lot of people in the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic are experiencing, but that doesn't mean that you can't bundle up, get outside, and enjoy birding, fishing, or other natural activities out here. Quite frankly, sometimes cold weather will push down some interesting waterfowl, owls, or other birds that aren't normally found so far south. But with poor conditions up north and heavy snows, birds are going to be moving to find food. You know, it's a fight for survival out there, and many of them do end up on the Outer Banks this time of year.
Yeah, and of course the Outer Banks is located along the Atlantic Flyway. And if you were a bird, why wouldn't you want to join just visit the Outer Banks? Because there's just so many different varieties of birds that use the Flyway that way. I mean, there's so much great natural habitat. There's so much natural food sources there. You know, the weather patterns are a little bit different between the ducks and the geese and the raptors and all the other birds that call that area home. You're going to see a little bit of something everywhere there, no matter what time of year, right?
Yeah, that's the truth, Chris. This time of year, there's a lot of focus on waterfowl, you know, both for birders and waterfowl hunters. It's a fantastic place to try your hand at goose hunting, duck hunting. There's also quite a few refuges and sanctuaries in the area that offer a place for waterfowl to rest throughout the winter time. We have huge flocks of redheads, scaup, scoters, all kinds of sea ducks that are in both the Pamlico Sound and the Atlantic Ocean. So that's something that's really neat to watch. And you kind of mentioned in the fall, we have a really impressive raptor migration because raptors like to follow the coastline. It gives them a landform and a landmark for them to follow. Some of the raptors go all the way to South America. Some of them are just heading a little bit further south of here. And then some spend the winter, like the kestrels and the merlins will have all winter long. But they breed much further north and they visit here in the fall.
Yeah, those little raptors are fun to spot, especially you see them most of the times on wires, right? I mean, a kestrel sitting up on the wire, the sparrowhawk, they're just a little bit different than the bigger birds. Like you see the osprey, you know what they are all the time, but the red tails and say the harriers, just the harrier, you can just tell by the flight of the harrier, it's just a little bit different. It's kind of neat, and that's just it. If you're a birder, you know the difference between each bird, just the way they fly, or just the way they sound, or where they screech, or the way they make their noise. There's so much to learn in birding. Is that what kind of drew you to it?
Yeah, I think it is, Chris. I've been into it since I was a really little kid, so I've been very fortunate to have been around birds and birding and the hobby my whole life. But I really, I've got to give a shout out to my mentors that they brought me along when I was just a little enthusiastic kid, and then I turned it into a career and was able to get a college degree in the field. So I think that there's a lot of value in introducing children to nature and birding because it opens a whole new world and they can be outside, they can be in fresh air, getting vitamin D, and it can be a social hobby too. You can get friends involved. Cornell has developed a couple of great apps, including eBird, that allows you to track your sightings and submit that to citizen science databases. And there's also the Merlin app, which is a wonderful way for folks to get introduced to birding and learn the sounds and calls of your local birds.
Right. If you hear it and you're not sure what it is, it'll identify it for you, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And along the Outer Banks where you're at there in Ocracoke, there's hundreds and hundreds of species of birds that come through and rare birds that you won't see other times. Do you ever see the snowy owl? Do you ever get those come through?
Yes, I've been pretty lucky. I've gotten to see the snowy owl on Ocracoke
Wow.
3 times.
Three
Yeah.
times.
Mhm.
Was he just hanging on the
Yeah.
beach? Was he on a tree? Was I mean, what's because
They
they don't really
they
perch, do
tend
they?
to like beaches.
So
Yeah,
crazy.
they like beach. They don't usually generally perch on like a tree or something like that. Occasionally you'll see them perched up, but they're native to the Canadian tundra. So they
Yeah.
like open areas. Sometimes they can be found at airports. The beach is a really good kind of substitute for their habitat up north down here. And there's food. I mean, a lot of the ones here I think are feeding on waterfowl or shorebirds, dunlin, sanderlings. That's a good snack for a snowy owl. And further north, they're going to be primarily feeding on lemmings and other small mammals.
If you don't know much about birding, some people might be surprised to find out that birds eat birds, but that's the way it is.
They do. Nature, it's red in tooth and claw, Chris.
In tooth and claw. Okay, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. These are some of the pictures that you took, which are it's just a small fraction of what you'll find in Ocracoke Island. What makes you Ocracoke different for a birder, and especially along the Outer Banks? Because you've got the Cape Hatteras National Seashore, you've got Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge, you've got the marshlands, you've got the beaches, you've got the water of the Sound. But Ocracoke is just sort of sitting out there by itself. How is it different?
Yeah, so I would say Ocracoke is pretty unique in the fact that the entire beachfront is protected. There is no development on the beachfront. If you've been here, you'll see that. We also have some excellent remaining examples of maritime forests that are preserved, like the North Carolina Coastal Land Trust has the Springer's Point Preserve, which has a lot of the quintessential live oaks and other native vegetation that's unique to the Southeast Atlantic ecoregion. So the trees tend to attract songbirds and migrant passerines, things like that that are here in spring and fall. And then the beach provides an abundance of habitat for shorebirds, raptors, and other species all year long. So I think the main reason why Ocracoke is a great birding place is that we have a variety of habitats and in general they're really well preserved, which as you know, so many of our coastal areas have been developed. So birds tend to concentrate in the areas that do have that remaining good habitat for them.
Which is a good reason not to overdevelop. And that's the beauty of Ocracoke. It is not overdeveloped, and it will never will be. It is what it is. I just think the natural vegetation there is a little bit different too, because birds know what they like. They're not a lot of hardwoods. It's not real giant trees or anything like that. Everything's a little lower to the ground. It does offer that protection that they're looking from whether it's the wind or the cold or whatever. But I think it draws in a little something different because of the natural vegetation.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. And sometimes the fact that we do often have like a scrubby low forest that makes it easier to see birds too,
Hmm.
because they're closer to eye level. So a lot of times that's really great for folks like us that are out there birding. You get a closer look and are able to identify some of the warblers or sparrows that stop by to visit, especially in September and early October.
Yeah, the fall migration and the spring migration are two of the best times to catch a glimpse of some unique birds on their way to north, south, wherever they're headed for that season. So, look, we're going to take a little short break here on Life Outdoors. We're going to join Matt Jansen and talk about maybe how you can get into it, maybe sort of some tips you can use to maybe find more birds or whatever that is. So, stick around, everyone. You're watching Life Outdoors.
Visit Ocracoke and step into a world where every moment feels like a getaway. Savor fresh seafood straight from the sea, stroll along sun-kissed beaches, and let the gentle breeze carry your cares away. Paddle calm waters, explore hidden trails, and discover the unique stories that make this island unforgettable. Explore a village where the pace is gentle, and every corner holds a story. Whether it's a beach campfire or a quiet walk, Ocracoke offers moments that linger long after you leave. Slow down, you're here. Plan your escape at visitocracokenc.com.
Welcome back to Life Outdoors. I'm your host, Chris Reckling. We are joined today by naturalist Matt Jansen, who is joining us from Ocracoke Island. Matt, we talked about a few things that I got to know you a little bit better. But let's just, and I said, let's not date this, but what the heck? It is cold. It's wintertime. And to me, that will keep people from going outdoors, but that makes me go outside sometimes even more because I don't like being cooped up. And if you do go out in the wintertime, this time of year, it's a little different on the Outer Banks because your vegetation doesn't change so much year round. It's not like your leaves change and you can see the forest, whatever. But you're going to spot birds maybe a little easier this time of year. Why is that? Because it's crazy how sometimes you can spot them easier in the wintertime.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with birds are really in survival mode this time of year. So what they're going to be doing is concentrating around sources of food. Y'all might notice that just at a feeder in your backyard. It might have activity throughout the year, but particularly when cold weather, snow, ice, those types of events are occurring, you will often see more activity at your feeder. And that's just kind of because birds are trying to survive with the cold temperatures. They need food, they need calories, just like us. Birds are warm-blooded, so they can generate their own heat in their metabolism. So they need to be surrounding food sources. So oftentimes during the winter, um, they're going to be fewer sources of food on the landscape. A lot of times birds are eating insects and things, but you've noticed it. Even there might be a particular tree in your neighborhood or your yard that has a lot of berries on it, and those are attracting waxwings and robins and yellow-rumped warblers, those types of things. Anything that's still fruiting right now is going to be providing a critical source of food. Grass seeds, sparrows, and other small songbirds are going to be going after those.
Yeah, acorns, wood ducks, geese, goose. They love that stuff. They'll gobble that stuff up. So now's a great time if you do have a feeder to get it out and keep it fresh. And don't forget fresh water as well, because when it
Yeah,
freezes, they can't get to fresh water.
yeah.
Yeah.
A little bubbler or something can be really great because it will provide the noise of moving water even in cold temperatures.
Yeah, and the cold temperatures sometimes can cause havoc on certain birds. Like, 30 years ago, you never saw a brown pelican, and now they're everywhere, and they've somehow think they survive in the winter up this way. It's not quite as cold in your neck of the woods, but up this way, 3 hours north, it's considerably colder. And it's not uncommon to see them here in the wintertime now, and sometimes their feet are freezing to docks, and they don't have access to food. And it's just crazy how some of them don't get the message. Go south.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So sometimes that can be tricky, and every once in a while we'll get what's called a wreck of razorbills or dovekies, which are small, like football-sized seabirds, and they're kind of doing the same thing. Obviously, we're right on the Atlantic coast, so we get a lot of seabirds, but they nest in New England and in Greenland and in the Atlantic provinces of Canada, and then they end up coming down here to find food. When fish stocks are failing further north, they'll come here, and some of them are quite weak and will wash up on the shore. So just keep your eyes out for any sort of unusual occurrences. Birds are susceptible to extreme weather events just like people are. So it's that time of year to be vigilant.
Matt, I'm gonna play some pictures that you've shot yourself. Tell me what we're seeing here.
So that's a purple sandpiper, and that's a pretty good bird down here in North Carolina. More commonly seen in the Northeast and New England. They breed in the Arctic tundra like most of our shorebirds do, and a lot of them spend the winter on rocky coastlines like Newfoundland, New Brunswick, that area. This is a common nighthawk. That bird does breed and nests right here on Ocracoke, but it's also a migrant. So it goes to the neotropics, the tropical Central America and South America for the winter because it feeds exclusively on insects.
You say common. There's nothing common about that. I've never seen one of those. What you got
I
here?
think this is a western kingbird, so that's another rare bird that showed up on Ocracoke this fall. That was a exciting find.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's more supposed to be in Mexico that time of year, but
Hmm.
we had a lot of west winds, and if you watch the weather, that can often lead to when are you going to find a rare bird? And this is a merlin. That's one of my favorite small falcons that we get throughout the winter here.
Look at that little beak.
Yeah,
It's a fast flyer.
they are fast, and they're pretty ruthless killers too, if you've ever seen them take out a
Is that a
small
y- is
bird.
that a is that a young one because of the plumage, or is it always like that?
That one looks like it's mostly in its adult plumage. Now
Okay.
this one here is a American golden plover, which looks very similar to the black-bellied plover that's around the beaches year round.
It's missing a
But
leg.
this one, yeah, well, he's got it tucked up. It looks like he's missing a
Just
leg, but
kidding.
he's just balancing, and he stopped on Ocracoke on his migration to South America. So it's a stopover. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like folks come to visit here for a week and recharge. Birds do the exact same thing.
Yeah, but you also have birds that have made Ocracoke their home. I mean, you see some of the same birds. I mean, might be the great blue heron, might be an egret, it might be wood duck, it might be a little something, right? They like it where they're at, right?
Yeah, and that's fascinating. We've had multiple resightings of banded birds. Bird banding, if you're not familiar with it, is a scientific technique to monitor bird populations and monitor individual birds. Some of the shorebirds that we monitor and the terns, they actually do have a field readable code, is what we call it. So there's a code on each band of the leg that identifies it. So it has a certain name and a certain individual can be identified over the years. And like you said, Chris, some of them hang out on Ocracoke all year round.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to get to know them like that on a personal basis. All right, we're going to take a short break on Life Outdoors. When we return, we'll wrap things up and talk more about birding with naturalist Matt Jansen. Stick around, everyone. You're watching Life Outdoors. Welcome back to Life Outdoors. I am your host, Chris Reckling, alongside Matt Jansen, naturalist living down there in the Outer Banks of North Carolina on Ocracoke Island. So do you have a favorite bird, Matt? I mean, come on, I know everybody likes certain birds. Are you a raptor guy, or are you a songbird? Maybe the gulls or the pelican. Just watching the pelicans are amazing, and I hate to put you in a box. What do you like?
I really like the warblers. I really like the warblers, Chris. I know they're only here for a fleeting time. They breed in Canada and they spend the winter in the Caribbean, but I think they're fascinating how it's such a small bird that weighs, anywhere between 5 and 10 grams, and it's making this incredible migration across the Gulf of Mexico, across the Caribbean Sea, and they're fascinating. There's a huge variety of them. Over 20 species can be found in the Mid-Atlantic region. So I think that's part of it too, is it's a little bit of an identification challenge. So I really do love the warblers. And there are a couple ubiquitous species who are here most of the year. In the wintertime, especially, we get the yellow-rumped warblers, which are pretty familiar up and down the coast. And I think it's great that at different seasons, there's going to be a different warbler in your neck of the woods.
What about hummingbirds? Do you get many hummingbirds your way?
We do, particularly in the wintertime, actually. It's becoming a wintering area for ruby-throated hummingbirds. Yeah, with the mild winters.
Y'all put out your feeders in the wintertime? Because they're not getting much natural food source, are they?
Yeah, most days it's warm enough that there are some insects around, small gnats and things that they're going to be getting at. And then on a day like very cold temperatures are in the area, you would be wanting to have your feeders out as a little bit of a supplemental food source.
What about swallows? They seem to be everywhere. Yeah.
Yes, and we get incredible migrations of tree swallows here on the Outer Banks, Chris. Sometimes 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 in a flock. So that's really one of amazing natural spectacles that's found here on the coast of North Carolina that some people don't even know exists. But every fall it happens.
Do you see murmurations?
Yes, we do.
Pretty awesome. Okay, so you're obviously getting purple martins. You're getting all the small flighty birds. Let's talk about the bigger birds. You ever see bald eagles down there? Maybe just
we do.
Sort of hanging out or what?
Yeah, we do. We've been kind of tracking a pair. It's been very difficult to see exactly where they're nesting, but we do have a couple of tall pine trees in the middle section of the island, and we have an inkling that they're nesting in one of them, but they've been a little bit flighty and kind of hard to track down. And then during the winter time, we'll also get a few more. And a lot of times we see them actually out on the beach hunting waterfowl.
You mean, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, they're so prolific up this way. You would think that they're starting to stretch their boundaries and look for their own habitats. And being out on the island is kind of neat. And you certainly are going to know what they are when you're seeing them soaring up above. They stand out. You're not gonna get them mixed up with a turkey vulture, which I'm sure you have those too, right?
We do.
You got so many birds down there.
Yeah, somebody's got to clean up the roadkill even out here. So we're glad to have the turkey vulture.
Let's switch gears right now from birds to other wild animals and mammals and everything else you're seeing out there on a regular basis there in Ocracoke.
Sure. So a lot of people know that Ocracoke is really a great fishing destination. There's so many different species of fish that you can see and catch if you're so inclined. In terms of mammals, we're an island, so we don't have quite as many species because everything that got out here has to swim out here itself. but we do have some deer and we have some river otters. We have some non-native mammals like the nutria that were brought here for trapping purposes several decades ago, and now they're proliferating. So we have a bunch of different kinds of mammals. One of the most fascinating things to see is during the summertime, dozens of sea turtles nest on the beach up and down the Outer Banks, but particularly here on Ocracoke, mainly loggerhead sea turtles, but there's other species such as green sea turtles too. So that can be an exciting thing to look for during the warmer months.
Let me ask you this, Matt, because it seems like, there's so much research and there's so much conservation going on right now. Are we seeing an uptick in nesting, or are we flatlined? Are we under? I mean, because it seems like now everyone's hyper vigilant to try to help out in any way they can.
Yes, they are. So the sea turtles have been listed under the Endangered Species Act for several decades now, and as a result of that, like you mentioned, there are pretty intensive conservation efforts dedicated to these species. I would say that in general, the nesting numbers on the Outer Banks have greatly increased in the last 20 years, so that's good news. On the year-to-year basis, there's minor fluctuations, and scientists are still trying to determine what does that mean. Are they nesting in cycles? Maybe certain years they take off and don't nest. That we're still trying to learn more about. And that's one of the great things about science is that there's always more to uncover out there.
Great thing about science is, and I know that you're just living in, the Outer Banks is a wildlife lover's paradise. You are right in the thick of it on an island. Between the people and the animals, it's always interesting. What do you want people to know if they want to get into birding? What should they do? And obviously, the sky is the limit, and it is a hobby that can take you places that you never could imagine because of the education involved.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Chris. I would say, first of all, get yourself a good field guide. That's a great tool. They've been around for a while. There's some that are illustrated. There's some that are photographic in nature. Take your pick, or better yet, get a couple. Get your hands on a field guide because that's a great way to get out and go birding. Now, there's an online field guide that's free to download on Android and Apple devices called the Merlin app that's developed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. That's a great place to go if you want something that's portable and is on your device. I also would advocate look into your local Audubon Society or birding club. Getting out and going birding with folks that are mentors who maybe know a little bit more than you, have been birding a little bit longer than you, that's really how I learned. And you kind of build those field observation skills by being out with folks who are willing to share. You know what I mean? That's why they're there. And I think that those clubs are a really excellent resource for people that are trying to get into it.
And also, do yourself a favor and get a good set of binoculars. And if you really want to up the game a little bit, and so you can combine hobbies, get a good camera and hunt responsibly. Go out and get pictures that you can enjoy, and then it'll challenge you even more to see how close you can actually get. But of course, with a good zoom.
Yeah, and a lot of folks are taking more and more photographs of birds these days, which I will say, when you do find a rare species, it's excellent to have a documentary photograph. So the fact is, everyone is carrying at least one small camera in their pocket these days, and you can always upgrade to a better device too. So I do recommend folks taking a camera with them when they go birding.
And if you do find a bird in distress or in need, or a wild animal or anything, what should they do? Obviously, there are lots of groups out there that are conservationists.
Yeah. So depending on where you are, there's generally a local rehabber. If you're on a certain park or property, they may have a phone number or a hotline that you should call or text. It kind of depends on your area, but I know in North Carolina, the Wildlife Resources Commission does have a wildlife help hotline, so you could use that when you're in the Outer Banks.
Well, listen, we're just about out of time, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us here on Life Outdoors, and it was great talking to you about the great outdoors, the Outer Banks there in Ocracoke.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Once again, Life Outdoors here is sponsored by Ocracoke Tourism Development Authority. Ocracoke, miles from the mainstream. Until next time, everybody, don't forget to live your life outdoors.